Welcome to Leadership Rules, where we believe leadership isn't just a role, it's a way of life. Whether you're leading a team, a community, or simply leading yourself, we're here to help you unlock the rules to lead your life with purpose and impact. I'm Nick Caniglio, joined by my co-host, Marnie Stockman, and together we co-authored Lead It Like Lasso, and we're thrilled today to welcome Lorraine Lee to the show.
Oh, we are definitely thrilled. So, a little bit about Lorraine, one of those leaders who walks the talk. So, went from being a quiet, overlooked introvert to a LinkedIn top voice with over 300,000 followers, a best selling author. And a globally recognized expert on her professional presence. So her new book, Unforgettable Presence, love it, is the career game changer we all needed today. And she's here to help us show up and stand out. So, welcome, Lorraine, to the party.
Thank you both for having me. I'm so excited to chat with you today.
We have been very excited to talk with you from the very first time we saw the cover of your book and a LinkedIn post about it. It's like, yes, she is our people. Love the message. I have to see if she will join us. So we're really honored that you have. We like to start with what we call biscuits with the boss. So,
Okay.
icebreaker question. So, first concert, best concert.
Oh, first concert, I think it was The Police with my
Cool.
parents.
Okay.
Nice.
And then best concert, I think probably Griffin. I think I have the most fun at. Yeah, EDM artist. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Easier one. Coffee or tea?
I actually don't drink coffee.
Oh,
Nor,
ditto.
nor do I.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Wow, neutral. Okay.
Dog or cat?
Cat.
Okay. So, book format, paper, audio, or electronic?
Electronic or audio.
Okay.
Although now I'm trying to get more into hardback covers. Yeah.
And how about leadership in general, art or science?
Ooh, I mean, I want to say a little bit of both, but that feels like a
Well, you're allowed to say a little bit of
okay, both.
I think that's perfect. All right. So, awesome. Let's get into it. So, I want to say before we get into it, I'm going to say it again. Just finished this book recently, and it is excellent. I
Yeah.
rarely find books. I'm a 20-year technology executive. I've been in leadership for a long time. I really find books that kind of, you know, they remind me of the things that I did well, I didn't do well, act as a perfect guide, but it wasn't just something that resonated with me. I'm reading this book and I'm like, my 21-year-old son needs to read it. I mean, it spans the spectrum and it was very well written. So I think well done. Well done, Lorraine. Really good.
Thank you so much.
Um,
I
so
appreciate
let's
it.
talk about some of the concepts in the book.
Yeah.
There was a day in my life, in my career, when the term personal brand really made me cringe.
Yep.
It gives me the heebie-jeebies, right? So I know you start off in the book talking about crafting your brand, and um, question for you: why is it so important to develop your brand? And beyond that, how does someone start to do that?
I think a lot of people still think or still feel the way that you felt, Nick, about brands and just like, oh, what? Like that's for companies or that's so cringy. It means I'm like
Salesy. Yeah.
talking about myself all the time, being really loud. And what I came to learn over the years in my career is that we all already have a brand. And I think that's a really important thing to realize. Now, you may not like the phrase personal brand. So in the book, I call it your career brand to better explain well, your brand is in service of your career. It's meant to help you reach your career goals. And what your brand essentially is your reputation.
Yeah.
And so when you think about it in that sense, we all already have a reputation and we already have a brand. And so we can either be thoughtful about it, be intentional about it, or leave it to chance and let other people define it for us, which I mean, we don't want that, right? So I start off the book talking about a story about how I was at LinkedIn and I was a hard worker and worked on high priority projects and was liked by my coworkers, but had a lot of trouble getting promoted. And a lot of that, in retrospect, I realize now is that because I wasn't thoughtful about my brand and I wasn't being intentional about okay, I want to be seen as a leader, so I need to be doing all these things. It was more passive and letting others define it for me.
It's so interesting because I mean, when I read that, it resonated. And you don't want to be braggy, but you still have to point out what you've done, right? Like, and what I liked about the book, it was clear about how to do that instead of just leaving it to chance. A lot of folks will say, "Well, you have to, say stand out or show people what you've done well." But folks need help with understanding what that looks like. And I felt like you did a good job of breaking it down into tactical pieces, right? You gave the big idea, but also have the tactics behind it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, so one of the frameworks I share is the EPIC career brand framework. And so EPIC stands for experiences, personality, identity, and community. And so to your point, Marnie, like sometimes brand, you're like, I don't even know, like it's just a big idea, like where do I even start?
Yeah.
And so those four criteria are a helpful place, I think, to start thinking through and trying to understand yourself a little bit better. And then, of course, you can go out externally too and talk to family and friends and managers and peers to get a better sense of, okay, how is my community or network actually perceiving me, and making sure it aligns with the way that you want to be seen.
So for the record, that's on page 11, folks. And I know because it was the first thing I walk and read at the same time, and I take a
Oh,
note
okay.
card with me. And that was the first. So we made it all the way to page 11, and then I'm already taking notes. So like that's
Nice.
that's a good sign. And I did love the acronym. Um, and it's funny, I have to like limit the questions. I can't talk about everything on the index card because we found that our listeners don't want to stay for 6 hours. So let me get to the next question. Uh, Mindset. What are some of the mindset shifts that professionals, folks need to think about if they want to be seen and catapult their careers?
There are so many that, again, I wish I had known earlier on. So I think the biggest one for me is hard work is going to get you promoted. Hard work is going to get you seen. And so when I was at LinkedIn, I was pushing, 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 again, more work, and working harder, trying harder. And that didn't do much, right? Didn't do anything. And so um, that understanding that hard work is foundational and you have to work hard and you have to do good work is important. And as you said, Marnie, like you have to be able to advocate for yourself. You have to let people know that your work happened, right? And that you're doing this thing, right? If only your immediate team knows what you're working on, that's not enough to get you promoted. You have to get buy-in. Other people have to know about you beyond just your manager. So that was one that was really big for me. And then I think a second one, as an example, is assuming that my manager knows all my goals and that I want to get promoted. And this one, again, like mind blown, like it feels so obvious as someone who's ambitious, like, oh, doesn't like everyone want to get promoted? Doesn't my manager know that? And they don't. And I share a story in the book about my coworker who hadn't gotten promoted for a while, and I didn't know why. And then one day she comes in and she gets promoted and she says, oh, my manager didn't know that I wanted to move up, and I simply had to say something, and then he realized and then put me up for promotion. So, again, that's a lot about taking your career into your own hands. I talk about the concept of becoming the CEO of your own career in the book. And so, yeah, you can't assume anything, and hopefully knowing that you can be really proactive and be intentional and have some control over these things gives people confidence and empowers them to realize, oh, it's not like my career is happening to me, but I'm really being proactive and making
Yeah.
things happen for myself.
Yeah, I love the term being the CEO of your own career, and kind of along those lines, and it's building on a little bit of what you were talking about, Lorraine. The whole notion. I know in the end of the book, you spend some time talking about executive presence, and when I was younger, really, I thought really it was presence was only for executives, right? But you talk about the difference between professional presence and executive presence. Can you expand a little bit more on that?
The whole point of this book is to redefine what presence means, because to your point, Nick, like we hear the word presence and we think, oh, executive presence, how I show up in the room, it's the boardroom, it's a high stakes situation. But presence is something that should be existing throughout our whole career. It's something that we should be working on all the time. And so the way I define presence is in the book is both how and where you are seen. And so I think a lot of people understand the how piece, right? I need people to perceive me a certain way, but especially with COVID, right? And us going remote and workplaces all over now, the where part is equally as important. So it's not just I need to show up a certain way in the office, but oh, I need to think about my video and virtual presence. I need to think about my LinkedIn presence. I need to think about, am I showing up in the right chat channels even, right? Like where am I present, right? Am I being seen by the right people at the right times in the right places? So presence is really much more holistic and something that can be worked on in the smaller moments of a day that happen very often, right? Our meetings, presentations, chat, email, etc. And then executive presence is going to be one piece of your overall presence, but presence is something that we can all tackle and keep improving and working on.
I want to key in on one thing there that was evident in the book that I found that I really appreciated, which is, and you brought it up, with COVID and the fact that so many more people are working remotely. You do a really good job, creating a book for 2025. There's a lot of references in my bookshelf that is sing and cite similar concepts that you talk to, but you really modernize it and you bring together different frameworks. And I think our audience should know about that because it really is applicable to the here and now and not what somebody wrote, 25 years ago when they weren't even contemplating the whole notion of remote work or video calls or something to that effect. And I've been working real hard to show crow's feet in my eyes when I smile because that was one of the things I definitely picked up on the picture.
Smile. Yep. Love it.
Yeah.
I don't have to do much work to get crow's feet to show up. And I just read a book that had like, be sure your AOL something. And I was like, ooh, you all need to rewrite. Like, that's so, I can't even remember. I know I called Nick and told him
Is it
about
a new book?
the things. It is not a new book, but it is a current book. And it was updated at the beginning of the pandemic to include some things, but they didn't bother taking out every reference to AOL, and it was multiple.
Yikes.
Yeah, that's exactly what I said. And so you mentioned video call in presence, and I should have read this book. I probably should have read this book when I was 4 because I have, as my daughter says, harsh features. And as Nick found out, we were at an event where he was presenting, and I was standing next to him. And I was listening intensely. But sadly for me, or more to the point for this picture, me listening intently, I have an RBF like nobody's business. So, what would you tell folks to things to think about on video calls and how to avoid the resting? I love that you called it the resting business face. I'm going to remind people of that this is just me listening intently, but I'm going to try to smile while I do it.
So I created a framework called the T method that I think is really helpful for video calls because when we're on video, it can feel like there's so much you can do. Like I'm sure you've all seen like really elaborate, fancy setups, like kind of like mood light, like whatever, just fancy lighting, all this stuff. But that can feel overwhelming. I don't think we have to go that far, especially in a corporate setting. So T, hopefully, and actually I'm realizing it like connects to your icebreaker questions, which is funny, but T, it's supposed to be like 3 key things to think about that are not overwhelming, that if you think about these 3 things, if you're intentional about these 3 things, you'll be set up for success. So that stands for technology. So making sure you have both the right hardware and software for your setup. Energy. So there's a bunch of different aspects of that. It can be body language. It can be how you're starting off a call, how you're using your small talk, for example, and then aesthetics. So making sure that you're showing up in the frame correctly, making sure that you've curated your whole environment, your background, and even potentially your foreground, right, depending on what technology you're using. So if you keep these 3 things in mind, I think you're going to be set up for success. I've had people say to me like, oh, you're talking about video presence. Like, haven't we all figured it out by now? No.
We can tell you all the podcasts that we've been on, folks do not.
Yeah, exactly. So, and again, like video is such a main way that we communicate now. So this is one important channel. Like you show up well, it doesn't take that much to tweak and refine, and people are, consciously or subconsciously going to have a more positive impression of you and think better of you, right? You're going to look more professional, more credible.
So I don't want to put you on the spot, Lorraine, but where do we fall in the grading rubric of the T framework right now?
Okay, I was thinking that this might be coming. Okay, so I'll do a quick coaching session. So I think Nick, the lighting can be a little bit less. I think it's a little bit strong right now for you. So that would be an aesthetic piece. And then both you and Marnie, I see Marnie, you have like the book in the background a little bit, but something that can be, and I know like right now we're a little bit compressed because of the podcast format, but I think if both of you can add a little personal touch in the background, a little color, I think that would benefit you as well. And it'll be a nice conversation starter.
Well, I sure hope you watch our next podcast, because if there's one thing we love, it's homework,
Yeah.
and I think
Awesome.
we're gonna be much better next time. Um, Let me switch gears a little bit. So I I have introverted tendencies. I would probably say I'm an introvert, and I really, another part about your book that I really enjoyed is that you shot it through the lens of an introvert on many cases. I know you talked about yourself being an introvert, and you brought in other people that you know, also came to the table as an introvert. So for our audience, you know, so many people think I'm an introvert. I can't stand out. Is that true? And if not, tell us how we can stand out as introverts.
I totally understand that sentiment because in corporate America, it does feel like sometimes the loudest voices and the loudest people get the attention and the promotions. I think what was really helpful for me is to realize that introverts do have a lot of superpowers at work. And what we need to do is not try to fit into another person's mold, but how can we lean into our strengths and really allow those to help us shine. And so, for example, there's going to be some maybe unconventional ways or things that you wouldn't necessarily think that introverts are good at, but are really important to the workplace. So, yes, an introvert might not like being at the happy hour and being the life of the party, but the introvert will create really nice one-on-one relationships and get to know you and care about you and your goals and your just general well-being as a person. And relationships are so critical to the workplace, right? So that's one. The second one that I like to talk about is that introverts are really powerful presenters. And I think this one people don't expect. So, as you mentioned, like I'm an introvert. I'll do speaking events, fireside chats, and people will be like, "What? You're an introvert?" And I'm like, "Yeah, just because I'm speaking here doesn't mean like I can't, like I can still speak as an introvert and be out there, but I'm gonna maybe not talk to anyone for the rest of the day and like wind down, like kind of have the energy reset. But introverts are so thoughtful about their audiences. They're thoughtful about, people just like understanding the information, connecting with them. They're really great at preparing. And so a prepared presentation in a controlled environment, like, oh, I'm going to present at this next team meeting, the introvert is going to do an amazing job, like really standing out. They know their stuff. They've been thoughtful. They've run it by their manager, peers, cross-functional collaborators. So again, there's many examples in the book, but those are two that I think are very, very valuable.
Yeah. And for the extroverts out there, I think it does a good job of better understanding the perspective and the strengths of the introvert. So thank you for covering that and putting that in the book.
Of
One of
course.
the other things we like to talk about is the notion of imposter syndrome. So, what strategies would you give to, I would say, those folks who feel the imposter syndrome, but what I now know to be like, what would you say to everyone who,
Yeah.
in fact, feels the imposter syndrome?
Imposter syndrome is so interesting. So as Nick mentioned, I've interviewed nearly 3 dozen experts, C-suite leaders, etc., for this book. And one of the themes that I saw in many of my interviews, I didn't get to include everyone's take, but that imposter syndrome is something that, again, like you said, Marnie, like everyone experiences
Yeah.
it at some point. And the way I have started to think about imposter syndrome over the years is that, again, like going back to mindset, is that imposter syndrome is a good thing because it means that you're putting yourself in a situation that is uncomfortable, where you're not the smartest person in the room, where you happen to know everything. And when you put yourself in situations like that, that's where you grow the most, right? We have to be challenged in order to grow. If you never felt imposter syndrome, I mean, you would be in scenarios that are probably too easy for you. Life would be pretty boring. Your work probably is pretty boring because you know everything, you're not learning anything. And so I think that mindset shift is really important. And then to know that, the confidence and the growth that happens when you push through despite that nervousness, despite that fear. And speaking about imposter syndrome, like I have not experienced it nearly as much as when this book, during this launch process, I'm like, I'm a pretty confident person, so I mean, I'm getting better now, like not letting it get to me. But with this book, I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, are these ideas new? Like, is this interesting enough? Like, because you're just so in it, and you think it's obvious to you, but like, what are other people going to think?
Yeah.
And so yeah, it comes up, right? But like, yeah, I've never written a book, so of course I'm going to be worried and concerned about certain things. But you push through. The book is out, and here I am, getting to talk to you both, and you keep going. And now I'm, if another book comes, I'm going to be more confident the next time and know what to do. So yeah, I think it's natural. And then the people who I think really can stand out, really can grow, are the ones who can push themselves past it.
Nice. So you mentioned, you give us a little hint that maybe there's another book coming out, but going back to Unforgettable
That was just a
Present.
hypothetical, big hypothetical.
Well, but seriously, what
Yeah.
was your favorite part about writing this book? I mean, did you have one? Was there anything that stands out?
I did. I really loved the interviews. So I
Mm,
studied journalism. So I think part of it was kind of going back to my roots in that sense, getting to interview people. But wow, it was just so cool. Like the people I got to interview for this book, I mean, best-selling authors, content creators with millions and millions of followers, C-suite leaders at Fortune 500 companies. It was just so cool to be able to talk to these people, many of whom I've admired from afar, and have this opportunity to really, get in their brains and find out their thoughts on all these different aspects of presence. So I think that was the coolest part. And I learned something from everyone. Everyone was amazing. I mean, with 36 people, sometimes you're not quite sure. Like,
Yeah.
maybe like a conversation or two might not be that interesting, but it was really special.
Well, you're going
yeah.
to have to give us some notes on how to actually get in touch with the people that you talk to, because there's some impressive names in
Yeah.
this book and a lot
Yeah.
of great insights for sure.
I
Yeah,
agree
yeah.
with that completely. So we always like to end with, what is a leadership rule that you feel like you always follow, or you think people maybe don't know and they should follow?
A leadership role, I think the first one that comes to mind is around being a manager and a good manager. And I think your teammates' problems, challenges, like to adopt them as your own. And that to be a good manager, you really have to care about your people, care about their progress and success. I see a lot of people who want to be in the role of manager because they think it's the fastest way to move up. But I think the best ones and the best leaders are the ones who really care about their team as people and care about helping them and seeing them grow.
Yeah. Can't
That's
can't argue
perfect.
with that. That's a very good rule.
So tell our audience, where could they find you? Where could they find the book? And what's the yeah, where's it all at? We'd love
Yeah.
to share that.
Of course. So the book is anywhere that you can buy books. So
Yeah.
Amazon, Barnes and Noble, etc. You can, of course, find me on LinkedIn. If you listen to me on this podcast, would love for you to send me a little note and let me know. I have a weekly newsletter, Career Bites, bite-sized tips to supercharge your career in 3 minutes or less. And then also many free LinkedIn learning courses that you can watch. So you can access all of that at lorraineklee.com.
Awesome.
Awesome. What
We'll
he
put that
said.
in the show notes. Yep.
Yeah. Thank you so much. We were
Thank
really
you.
looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, this was awesome. So great to meet you both.
Yeah. Likewise. Thanks, Larry.